everyone, my name is Yakshini Priya Sertu and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be creating my own bookmarks by cutting them as well as painting them. So let's go into the project. So for this project, you're going to need a couple of things. You'll need a regular graphite pencil or a mechanical pencil, a cutting tool. You will need a pair of scissors, a metal ruler, and a self-healing cutting mat or a cutting mat. If you don't have one of these, you can just use a thick cardboard on your tabletop surface to protect it from getting damaged when you're cutting. And for the bookmarks, the paper I'm using is quite a thick paper. It's a watercolor paper, 300 GSM, and it is the hot press paper because I want a smooth paper because I'm going to be working with watercolors as well as Inktense pencils. So I want a quite thick paper, but I want a smooth paper and something that can hold a lot of water. Now I am using an extra piece of normal printer paper underneath when I'm going to be cutting, just to avoid too much damage to my mat, even though it is self-healing. Now I've got a couple of templates that I've created. I've created that a little strip that you saw me show you now. That strip is actually for the corners of the bookmark. Now that is for you to cut your bookmarks if you want this corner edge, which instead of being the sharp pointed corners, you want it to be rounded edges on the corners. Then I've created a template for that. You can just create one yourself, but if you'd like to have the templates for this bookmarks as well as the corner edge template, you can head over to my Patreon page and you can download it there. It is open for everybody to download, so you can just head over there and get that there if you'd like to use that. Now you do get corner cutters as well, but I don't have one. So I had to just create this one that's even, and you'll see how I'm going to use it now as we're going to be cutting our bookmarks and how I place it on the paper and draw it, outline it, and then basically use a scissor to cut. Now the reason why I use a scissor instead of the cutter is because the scissor allows me control, and I have better control to get a smooth and smaller cover or cutting in a smaller area. Whereas with the bookmarks, I'm using the cutter to cut just to get a smooth edge, which is going to be not going to have any jagged edges. So now what I'm doing now for the bookmarks, I have got on my template, I've got the measurements for the bookmarks, but the bookmark is up to you how thick you want it or how wide you want it, how long you want it. It's entirely up to you. But I do have on the template what the size is of the bookmark that I've created. The width and the length, and I do have a PDF document, so if you print it on A4 page, your normal printer paper, that is the actual size of the bookmark if you cut out that template. So the corner edge template is there, and the bookmark template is there as well as the measurements for the bookmarks. If you're interested in that, as I said, you can head over to my Patreon channel or my Patreon page. The link is going to be listed down below in the description. It's open to anybody. You can download it. You don't have to be a patron to get that PDF document. You can just download it from my page. So what I'm doing now is I'm just doing the measurements as per my bookmark measurements, and I'm drawing it onto my paper. Now I'm using this, I'm drawing onto the actual paper of the watercolor paper. So I'm just drawing the lines just so that I have a guide to follow when I'm going to be cutting with my cutting tool. And the reason why I'm using a metal ruler is when you're going to be running the cutting tool against the ruler to cut the paper, you can damage a plastic ruler. So it's more advisable to use a metal ruler because it can't get damaged when you're running that blade against the side of it. Okay, so now I've got my piece of paper underneath the watercolor paper, and now I'm going to just put my ruler on the line. Now I am using, when I drew my lines, I drew them from the edge of the paper to the center, because the edges are straight already. So then I can have only have to cut one side of the bookmark. So you can see I'm just running that cutting tool and applying a little bit of pressure because it's quite a thick paper. So I want to get a smooth edge, so I need to apply a bit more pressure. And if you see the edge is a little askew, or if it has a little bits that are jagged, all you got to do is just line up your ruler again and go hold it firm. And keep your fingers away from the blade as you run the blade down the ruler. You don't want to hurt yourself with the cutting tool. And there we go. If you prefer using a scissor, you can. You just have to cut it very slowly and make sure you follow the line precisely, not to have any jagged edges. You don't have to use a cutting tool, but I just found it better to use that when I was working with or doing this project. Now I'm going to cut the second one. As you can see, I'm only cutting in the center. I've kept the original edges of the page as the one side of the bookmark. Careful for your fingers when you are cutting. Just another reminder. If you're not sure about the blades, then rather just go for a scissor. And make sure after you finish cutting with your cutting tool, just close the blade so that it is not going to hurt you or anyone else. Okay, so now I'm using the corner or the corner edge template that I created just to get those round corners. So what I'm going to do now, I'm lining it up to the side of the page. That's why I keep it so long, so that I can hold it against the side of the page, make sure it's aligned with the paper, and then I just use the pencil to go outline that corner. Then I flip it over the other way, and then I go onto the left side of the bookmark. Then I turn the bookmark down, and again I start with the left side, and I just go around the corner, and then I flip it over and place it on the right side of the bookmark, and then I make sure it's even on the side and aligned correctly, and I just draw that line around it. So you can see now I've got those markings on the edge. Now I can work with my scissor and cut those edges smoothly. So I've just grabbed my eraser just to erase some extra lines that I think accidentally went onto my bookmark with a pencil. And now I'm just going in and cutting those corners, or those little round corners. You can see as I'm turning the scissor as I'm going around, following that pencil line that I drew, or the pencil outline that I drew. Now we're going on to the next one. You can see I just move the scissor and move my hand with the scissor and keep the paper turning as I go around that corners. Now if you have a corner cutter, they do sell them. You can use that. That's much easier. If you don't want to have the round corners, you can leave them with the pointed corners of the paper. That's also fine. I just think that for me personally, my personal preference, I think the bookmarks look cute having the round corners. So I decided to add that to around the corners of these bookmarks. Now I'm just erasing those pencil lines if there's anything still there on the corners. We don't want any graphite when we're going to start working with the watercolors. So I'm repeating the process for this one, the second one. I'm lining it up to the edge again, going around the corner. Now once again, just a reminder, if you do want these templates, you can create them yourself. Just draw a corner edge according to the size you want, and then cut out a strip of, I'm using the same watercolor paper for that template. You can use that, or a thick paper or card, whatever you have. You can just cut that as a template and then make it a bit longer so you can line it to your side of your paper. And you can use this to cut corners that are, to round your corners for anything, not just bookmarks. It can be for any other paper or cards that you make or anything like that. You can use it for. But like I said, if you do want the templates, you can get them on my Patreon page. The link is down below in the description. You don't have to be a patron to get these templates. It's a PDF document, so you can just use the templates, download it from my Patreon page, and use the templates to create your own bookmarks. Now I'm just going with the scissor once again, turning my scissor and the bookmark or the paper around as I'm cutting those ends, just to make sure that they are smooth and they are completely evenly round as per the outline that I drew with pencil. So there are my bookmarks, and now we are going to start working on the designing them or to start working on the painting of them. Okay, so now that we got the bookmarks cut out and they are ready for us to start designing our drawings on them or our paintings on them. So now what I'm doing now is I'm just using my regular sketchbook and drawing out little columns the size more or less of my bookmarks, and I'm starting to design the paintings that I want to create. So the first one that I'm creating here is a ship at sunset. So you can see I'm just using a graphite pencil or my mechanical pencil, and I'm just loosely just getting basically all the areas that I want, the angle and everything that I want, just to see how it's going to look on that bookmark. I have changed it when you see me do the actual drawing onto the bookmark. I am going to change that, but just to get an idea of what it's going to look like. And then the second one is a bookmark which I'm going to have flowers painted on it. So you can see I'm going and just drawing in some flowers across the entire bookmark. So now I'm just going in with the actual bookmarks, and I am drawing in or basically copying those images that I drew and just putting them onto the actual bookmark, or drawing them onto the actual bookmark. Now for the drawing on the bookmark, I'm actually using a water-soluble graphite pencil so that I don't have any harsh graphite lines when I start to paint with the watercolors. So now I'm going in with my watercolors. In the description I'll list all the supplies I'm using, but I'm just going in with some watercolors. I'm not taping it down because I'm basically painting the entire bookmark, so I don't want to have the edges that are not painted, and I am using a hairdryer to dry the layers as I'm painting. Between layers of paint, I'm using the hairdryer. If you see that the paper is a little warped as it does look here, it's not a problem. That's not a problem. You just let it dry, finish your painting. When you're done with it and it's completely dry, then you can just put it under a book or in a book and just flatten it with some books or overnight, and then the next day they were completely flat. So that doesn't have a problem as long as you're using a watercolor paper. It's quite a thick paper, so it'll be able to handle water. Now you can see I'm starting to lay in the colors for the flowers, and I'm just painting in. I'm keeping it very loose to an extent. I'm not going in too much of detail, but I am adding multiple layers of color just to make those flowers look a bit more three-dimensional. I don't want it to look too cartoony or too flat. I want it to look a bit, have dimension with the petals and the shadows and the lighter areas of the petals. So you can see I am going and adding multiple layers of paint, but I'm also adding, where you see me going lighter with the watercolor, I'm adding some watercolor mixed with some white gouache, because white gouache is opaque. So I use that to just cover areas that I want to lighten up, where I went too dark with the watercolors. So just varying the different greens to get that different colors on the stems and the leaves, and then going through with the pinks and the white as well on the petals for the flowers, and not forgetting the centers with the little yellow and that little bit of a reddish tone, little spots on the center. So it's a very simple flower. I don't want anything too complicated. I just want to have the look of flowers, and it must just look something pretty and something with like very basically nice pinks around it. Now I'm going through over the blue that I did in the background, the light blue. I'm going through with some pinks and greens, just to put a little bit more dimension to the background, so that the flowers don't look like they're only on a stark blue background. There's a little bit of pink and a hints of green in the background, which may even indicate other flowers that are in the background, and these are just standing out from those at the back. So that's what I tried to do with this bookmark. And then I just adding some final details. So there is the little that's in the center. I'm just adding some final touches. And there we have our first bookmark. Now for the second one, I'm doing the ship that I showed you the initial sketch. So I drew the sketch of the ship again, like I did with the flowers. I redrew it onto the bookmark with a water-soluble graphite pencil. And now I'm just coming through with some blues because it's a sunset and the ship is has us in the water, and you see the dark water, sun is setting. You see the orange in the sky, the peaches, the pinks. So I'm just bringing some of that blues and purples and some of those oranges, peach color, and some hints of pink into the background. And then I'm just putting in the layers for the or the look of water, just creating some of the shadows in the clouds as well. And now I'm going in with a very light gray just to get some of those sails to color them in. Remember, the sun is setting, so there's a bit of a shadow cast on all of them as because the sunset is behind, so the light is shining from the back. So the front will be in shadow to an extent, but I didn't want to make it too dark. Like I said, these are not hyper realistic drawings or paintings. I just wanted to create a fun project and to create a drawing of a ship. So you can see I'm using the watercolors and I'm just applying some of the details, adding some of those wires, or I don't know what they're called, but the rope that's tying the sails to the wooden beams. I'm adding some shadows to those wooden beams, and also keeping a very light hand as I'm adding those rope. Don't want it to be too thick because those are usually very fine when you see the photographs. And I'm just adding some little windows on the side there so that we can see that it actually is a ship. I'm not paying too much of attention to really small details, but I'm adding the shadows in the water where the ship is casting a shadow over the water, adding some of the sunset highlights or colors onto the water in the background. And yeah, I just want to get that idea of a ship, but nothing too detailed. But it must look like a ship actually and have some dimension of a ship. So those are the first two that I've done. Now for the third bookmark, I decided to use stencils or a stencil for this one. I don't usually use stencils much unless it's to a background, to do a background with airbrush on my paintings, or a color pencil piece to do the background with an airbrush. Then maybe I do use it. I haven't used it many times, but I do have these stencils that basically fitted perfectly on the bookmark. So I decided to actually use them and see how they look or how it turns out. Now, I don't know the brand of these stencils. They were just a stencil that was basically on sale at one of the art or craft stores that I go to. But any stencil that you like can work. You can create your own. You can buy it. Any stencil that you want to use, you can use. So I'm using a water-soluble graphite pencil to stencil in the image onto my bookmark. And then I'm just marking off little points there. What I wanted to achieve with this bookmark is I wanted to have the gradient effect. So I decided to use the Derwent Inktense pencils to create this gradient from the reddish pinks to purples to darker purples to blues, and then blues to teals, turquoises, greens, and then the lighter greens. So that's the colors that I wanted to have in this gradient and have it move from one to the other on this design of the stencil. So the reason I use the Derwent Inktense, they are very vibrant colors, especially when you activate them with water. So that's why I chose these pencils. I think I had roughly, I'm not too sure, 22 or 24 different colors. But I basically went through my entire tin of pencils, a set of 72 that I have. I have got a swatch for them. I looked at all the colors when they activated with water, how they look, and I chose the colors moving from the reddish pinks to the purples, blues, darker blues, lighter blues, darker blues, moving to the greens, and that's how I selected my colors. So when you saw me mark off on the side, it was just to mark off the number of pencils, just so that as I'm adding the color of the pencils, I move from one to the next. So I know that each space that I have, that line must be in one color, and then the next line. So sort of like a printer would work line by line. I was working section by section or little piece by piece for the number of pencils that I used, working downwards. So you can see I just erased those little marking points that I created on the side. And now I'm just using a very small fine round brush just to apply the water and activate the Inktense. Now, when I'm applying the water, obviously I want to keep that gradient, so I'm moving from the top, moving down, because I want to keep the colors in that gradient. I don't want to take some of the darker colors to the lighter colors. So you can see how I'm working through it and going down the bookmark. So you can see I moved from the pinks to the purples to the blues, and then now I'm going to go on to the sort of teals or blue greens, and then I'm going to go on to the greens. So for this one, I decided to keep the background white. I didn't want to change the background in any way. I think it looks really nice just as it was, and I didn't want to cause a problem or have a mistake happen with the background, and then I will mess up the entire piece. So I just left it with that gradient look on the background, which is plain white, which I think looks good. But if you want to add a background, you can. It's entirely up to you. This is just what I prefer to do. So you can see I'm just working section by section, line by line, and just activating the Inktense with water. So that is my third bookmark that I created, and this is the one using the stencil, and I was actually very impressed at how it came out. It looks really pretty. So now I've got the 3 bookmarks that I've created, the one with the ship, the flowers, and the stencil with the gradient colors. So now I just want to add one more thing to the one I just created now, the third one with the different colors. I've got, you can do this or you can choose not to. I've got a little hole, which you'll also find on the template, by the way, where the hole placement is. So I decided to make a little hole on the top and then use some ribbon and thread it through and tie it so that I've got this little ribbon hanging from the bookmark. So what I'm doing now is I'm just measuring the center point. But like I said, you will find this circle or the point where the hole must come. You will find it on the bookmark template if you choose to use the hole. You could do this for all of them. You could not do it. It's up to you. I'm using a paper punch just to get that hole through. So I'm just removing the bottom of the paper punch. And then you can see when you turn it around, you can see that little mechanism. When you press it, you can see it coming out. So I'm just lining it up with the hole. So you can see I'm lining it. Let me just go a little closer so you can see. Okay, so you can see I'm just lining it up with the hole, and then I'm just punching it through. So we have that little hole. If you see the hole is not completely cut through, you can turn it around and then just cut that same area and just get those little bits that didn't cut through until you have a smooth hole. You could do this before you start the drawing in case you damage the bookmark. Then you can just cut a new bookmark and you won't damage your finished piece. So now I'm just threading my ribbon through. You can use any ribbon, any color. This is the one that I had lying around, a little piece of ribbon. So I said, okay, it looks good. There's some pinkish, purplish colors, and you have the maroon sort of mauvish, maroonish color ribbon. So I just decided to use it for this. So you can see I'm just tying a single knot. You don't have to tie a double knot. If you'd like to tie a double knot, you can. And then just make sure that it's smooth on the front so that you can see that it's smooth. And then there you have it. That is our bookmarks. So I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like and share. Feel free to comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one. Bye.